First, though, this morning, a woman from Cornwall is carrying out a survey for the Alzheimer's Society after fears about the care of her elderly relatives. Jenny Moore from St Austell claims her father-in-law and mother-in-law, Eric and Rose Moore, have been the victims of what she describes as appalling standards. The family says they've moved the couple from care home to care home in search of better care. Eric died earlier this year, and Rose is now living in her fourth home in 2 years. We've been hearing from Jenny.
I'm hoping to hear from people who work in care homes about things that make their job difficult and what could make life a lot easier for them and ways they can improve the care that they want to give. And relatives, things that may have distressed them or positive things that they've seen in care homes that hopefully we could use that information to filter it through to other care homes in the county.
And what sort of incidents have you seen your mother-in-law and father-in-law involved in which have worried you?
I think one of the things is sort of personal care and their appearance. Although they're not aware how they look and they're quite happy, you feel you've got to act on their behalf and you want them to look how they would want to look if they were as they were before dementia. In
terms of staffing, how adequate is staffing?
From our experience and from hearing about other people in the rest of the country, it seems a national problem that staffing shortages do cause problems in the quality of care because the staff just can't cope with what they have to do.
Are you saying that the residents of some homes are neglected?
Of course, different people may look at the word neglect in different ways. I've never witnessed any abuse as such, but for me, for people to be unsupervised for an hour and a half in communal areas, because, again, probably down to the lack of staff that are on duty, I don't consider to be acceptable. I've witnessed dirty linen on beds where they've still been like that in the middle of the day, where the person has left that room before breakfast and not returned to it. General hygiene, hair being washed, but again with dementia, sometimes residents may not want their hair washed and the staff have a battle on their hands to try and convince that person. So sometimes it's not always appropriate to do personal care, but it's just picking your moment. But again, if the staff are busy, they might just miss that window of opportunity.
Why have you found it necessary for your in-laws to be in 4 different homes in 2 years? You keep moving them.
Yeah, well, the first 3 moves weren't actually anything, though they weren't our choice. The first home, it was a respite emergency care placement which didn't meet their needs, and then we did move them to the next home. We were then given notice to move my in-laws out. We were given a week's notice, and then the last home, we've moved from there after father-in-law died, and mum is nearer to us now, so we can play a much more active role in her life. And it has been said to us that we expect too much, but I don't actually agree with that. We know that nobody could look after my mother-in-law like we could, and some compromises do have to be made, but I think the basic care standards need to ensure that they are put in place.
Jenny Moore talking to BBC Radio Cornwall's Chris Young. We should say that 3 of the homes in which Jenny Moore's in-laws lived were privately run. Rose Moore is now in a Cornwall care home, and her family say they're encouraged to be working with the staff there to ensure that she gets suitable care. Well, with me now is Douglas Webb, who's the Chief Executive of Cornwall Care, which runs 18 care homes across the county. Morning to you.
Good morning.
Let's talk about this. I know you can't talk specifically about the case involving the Moores, but is Jenny Moore right to be worried about standards in some care homes?
Yeah, I think Jenny raises a number of really interesting points, and it's something we do need to discuss as a society. If you look at the numbers, the number of people with dementia is going to grow from about 8,000 to 12,000 over the next 10 years in Cornwall. That's a 50% increase. Now, there are 168 care homes in Cornwall, and the Commission for Quality Care that regulates these homes says that 21% of these homes in Cornwall are either poor or adequate, and that's just not good enough. People should expect to have their relatives in a care home that's at least good, and I'm very happy to say that all of Cornwall care homes are rated this way.
But how can such a high proportion be still in that sort of substandard position?
Well, the CQC, the Care Quality Commission, inspects the homes and then sets out the improvements that homes need to make, and then it's down to the individual homeowners to make those improvements.
What sort of factors do you think are at play here? Jenny Moore was suggesting that there was a real issue with resources in terms of staff shortages.
Well, I think the most important thing, especially when caring for people with dementia, is that it's a partnership, actually. Relatives don't hand over their mums and dads to the care home owners entirely. It's a true partnership between all three parties to understand what that individual needs. And that way, the care staff can learn as much as possible about the individuals in their care and provide appropriate care. And Jenny also raised a very good point, that sometimes with an older person with dementia, it's not appropriate to force them into your way of wanting to do things, saying, well, it's time to wash now or it's time to shave now. You've got to take the right opportunity. And for example, we had a gentleman living with us who decided not to shave. And at first we thought, well, that's fine, that's his choice. But in talking with his family, we realised that in his earlier life this man was a professional, and to go unshaven would have been something he just wouldn't have done, and it caused his family a great deal of distress. Now, knowing that, we were able to negotiate with this man around being shaved and to learn when the best opportunity was to do that. And we like to think that negotiation, that three-way discussion, enabled us to provide care and preserve the gentleman's dignity and choice. So it's not always easy.
It's having the time and patience to get to that sort of compromise, that sort of situation. What about the issue of dignity, though, here? Suggestions that perhaps there was soiled bedding, that people weren't being changed properly in previous homes, and that perhaps they were even wearing somebody else's clothes because they hadn't been returned to the appropriate owner. What about dignity for these people in these care homes?
Well, dignity is very important, but dignity means different things to different people. And when you're working with older people with dementia, they are going to display behaviours and do things that we wouldn't regard as being normal or acceptable. What we've got to do is to provide care for these people, negotiate with them, so that we don't constrain their freedom, yet we do allow them to live with as much dignity as possible. And I think at the heart of this is a care home or an organisation that is ambitious about what care for these people can be, because we're talking about lives, not services. And if you're going to be ambitious about life for people, that does include some risk.
Do you support the idea of Jenny Moore, or whether it's her or anybody else, actually gaining some new research, getting anecdotal evidence from families about what they make of the treatment of their relatives in care homes?
Well, as I said, that three-way negotiation, I think, is very important, and I've got our customer charter here, and it opens by saying at the centre of good client and customer care is the need to have open and honest conversations. We've recently started creating residence groups in our care homes so that we can have those open and honest conversations.
But getting that information across from whether the client is in your care home or somewhere else, is getting that picture, that full picture of
Absolutely.
what life is like right now. Surely you endorse that?
I absolutely endorse that. I'm not necessarily a fan of questionnaires. I think the opportunity to get into deep dialogue with people about things which they care very passionately is much more informative than a questionnaire. There, of course, I applaud any attempt to increase the information in the system.
Douglas Webb from Cornwall Care, Chief Executive of that organisation which runs 18 care homes across the country. Thank you very much for that this morning. It's 14 minutes past 7 now.